Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us on the Kay Properties 1031 Delaware Statutory Trust Basics and Frequently Asked Questions with our CEO and founder, Dwight Kay. We will begin with the risks and disclosures. DST 1031 properties are only available to accredited investors, generally described as having a net worth of over $1 million exclusive of primary residence, and accredited entities only, generally described as having an entity owned entirely by accredited investors and/or an entity with gross assets of over $5 million. If you are unsure if you are an accredited investor and/or accredited entity, please verify with your CPA and attorney. You may be required to verify your status as an accredited investor. The information herein has been prepared for educational purposes only and does not constitute an offer to purchase securities, DST properties, and/or real estate. Such offers are only made through private placement memorandums, PPMs, which are solely available to accredited investors and accredited entities. IRC Section 1031, IRC Section 1033, and IRC Section 721 are complex tax concepts. Therefore, you should consult with your legal and tax professional regarding your specific particular situation regarding your 1031 exchange as to if an investment in real estate and DST properties is suitable for you. The material is not to be interpreted as tax or legal advice. Please speak with your own tax and legal advisors for advice and guidance regarding your particular situation. There are material risks associated with investing in real estate and Delaware Statutory Trust properties and real estate securities, including illiquidity, tenant vacancies, general market conditions and competition, lack of operating history, interest rate risks, the risks of new supply coming to market and softening rental rates, general risks of owning and operating commercial and multifamily properties, short-term leases associated with multifamily properties, financing risk, potential adverse tax consequences, general economic risk, development risk, and long hold periods. There's a risk of loss of the entire investment principal. For an investor to qualify for this type of investment, there are both financial requirements and suitability requirements that must match specific objectives, goals, and risk tolerances. The included scenarios are hypothetical and are not intended to represent an actual investor situation or performance of investments. Your particular scenario may have many other factors not mentioned here. Because investors' situations and objectives vary, this information is not to be intended to indicate suitability for any particular investor. Diversification does not guarantee profits or guarantee protection against losses. This information is from sources we believe to be reliable. However, we cannot guarantee or represent that it is accurate or complete. Past performance is not indicative of future returns. Potential cash flows, returns, appreciation are not guaranteed and could be lower than anticipated. Thank you, everybody, for listening in. And now I'd like to turn the call over to Dwight Kay, CEO and founder of Kay Properties and Investments.
All right, thanks so much, Nick. Thanks so much, everybody, for joining in today for the webinar on Delaware Statutory Trusts, Basics and Frequently Asked Questions. This is going to be a short but informative presentation on DSTs, how they work, kind of what the basics are, the FAQs for investors. This comes from our experience. We've been involved and participated in over $30 billion of DST properties. And so hopefully this can help. We can kind of shine some light on this subject that we've been living and breathing for a very long time now and helped many, many clients throughout the country. So we'll just jump right into it. Delaware Statutory Trusts, frequently asked questions. So what is a DST 1031 property? The DST 1031 property, it's a type of replacement property that's used for 1031 exchange as well as for direct cash investments. Has the IRS approved the use of a DST property for a 1031 exchange? The answer is yes. The DST structure has been approved by the IRS as 1031 exchange compatible, and that was under IRC Revenue Ruling 2004-86. So 2004-86 was the ruling whereby the IRS said, yes, a properly structured DST will indeed qualify for like-kind purposes for 1031 exchange. And there was a handful of DSTs that were used back then. They really didn't come into fruition and being utilized by sponsor companies until really 2009, 2010, 2011, and even 12. And that was because the kind of the go-to structure for group ownership of passively managed real estate was the tenant in common structure. And with the credit crunch, the GFC, Great Financial Crisis, 2008 and 2009, lenders really didn't want to make 34, 35 different individual loans to a group of owners, and that's how the tenant in common structure was put together. With the DST, the lenders were much more comfortable because they made one loan on the property, and they had one sponsor, one trustee that was responsible for that loan. It was secured by the property, but they didn't have to deal with 35 different co-owners as the TIC structure. And so when that credit crunch happened in 08 and 09, lenders really were shying away from the tenant in common structure and wanting to see more of the DST structure, whereby it was more professional sponsorship of the asset, and it was one loan on behalf of that DST. So 2004-86, that was when the IRS blessed it to qualify the DST, but we really didn't start seeing them until 2009, 10, 11, and so. So again, what is a Delaware Statutory Trust? The DST, it's an entity that's used to hold title to real estate. In some ways, the DST is like a LLC or a limited liability company. It's just an entity used to hold titles to that real estate. Many of you own your properties in a family living trust, in an LLC. You might have a partnership with some partners, and that's how you hold title to your property. The DST is the same thing. It's an entity used to hold title. So unlike an LLC, though, a DST does indeed qualify as like-kind property for a 1031 exchange. And again, that was through that IRS revenue ruling 2004-86, stating that a properly structured Delaware statutory trust would indeed qualify as like-kind. So how would a Delaware statutory trust property work in regards to potential distributions for investors and potential appreciation for investors? So number one, DST investors, they receive their pro rata portion of the potential distributions from the property. So if you were to purchase 1% of the Delaware Statutory Trust, you would get 1% of the potential pro rata distributions from the property. If you purchase 10% of the DST, you get 10% of the potential distributions. Okay, so it's a pro rata basis depending on your ownership level and amount. It is important, as we noted in the risk disclosures, that distributions, rental income from a DST, it's the same as the properties that you own on your own, whether you own multifamily or have an industrial property or a retail property, any type of investment real estate that you would own and operate on your own. There's no guarantee that your tenant would pay rent that month. And so, with DSTs, the same thing. These distributions, they are not guaranteed. They are potential. They can stop for any number of reasons, which we will dig into as we get further down the line here. So you get your pro rata portions of the potential distributions of the property. You're also going to receive 100% of your pro rata portion of any appreciation potential of the property, and that's net of sales costs. So when the property sells, if you were to have owned 10% of that Delaware Statutory Trust, you will receive 10% of that potential appreciation of the property. Okay, so and then from there, and we call that a full cycle event. When you exchange into a DST, the DST is operated by the DST sponsor company for any number of years. Typically, we're seeing 3 to 5 year hold periods, but they can be as long as up to 10 years. I think I was personally invested in one that went for about 12 and a half years. So they can go much longer than a typical 3 to 7 year hold period. But we have seen them sell, in as quickly as a year and a half or so as well. But when that happens, we call that a full cycle event. So the DST then sells the property that you exchange into. That DST is sold to a third party buyer. Okay, typically a third party buyer. That's what we call full cycle. So the unique thing about the DST though is that you as the investors receive 100% of your pro rata portion of the appreciation on the property, whereby a lot of the REITs out there or crowdfunding sites or LLCs or real estate funds, those are typically a waterfall where you don't receive 100% of the pro rata portion of the appreciation potential. you receive, a preferred return, and then after that, it's a waterfall split with the real estate sponsor company, where it's 70-30 or 50-50 or 60-40 after the you preferred return. And so you're giving up a portion of your upside to the real estate sponsor company. And that is kind of the beauty of the DST, is that, excuse me, you as the investor, again, you're going to receive 100% of your pro rata portion of any potential appreciation of the property net of sales costs. And again, just like buying a property in your town or city, you buy it for a price. There's no guarantee that it's going to be sold at a higher price in a number of years. That's just not how real estate works. So same thing with DSTs, no guarantees. So when a DST property is sold, are investors able to do another 1031 exchange? And the answer is yes. So when that property, like I stated earlier, goes full cycle, as it's called, the DST 1031 property, it's sold. You as an investor are free to do another 1031 exchange into any type of like-kind replacement property. So you're going to be able to, exchange into another DST if you want, or diversified portfolio of DSTs. You could exchange out of your DST into an apartment building that you would manage on your own. You could exchange into a warehouse or a piece of land, any other type of like-kind real estate held for investment or business purposes. So once you 1031 into a DST, you're not stuck there forever. When that DST goes full cycle and sells, you're going to be able to 1031 exchange out into any other type of like-kind property. So this is, again, unlike most other forms of private equity real estate, such as LLCs, partnerships, private REITs, investors are typically unable to execute a 1031 exchange upon the sale of that entity's assets or properties. And so instead, you're going to have to pay, if you invest in that real estate fund or in that REIT, you typically are going to have to pay capital gains taxes and depreciation recapture taxes upon that sale. Where with the DST, if you 1031 into the property, or if you make a direct cash investment, which a lot of investors like to do, to diversify out of the stock market, get away from volatility in the stock market, looking for potential tax advantages, potential monthly distributions. When that DST property is sold, you're able to do another 1031 exchange into any type of like-kind replacement property. Okay, so with Delaware Statutory Trusts, one of the main reasons why investors like to consider these is that there's no more day-to-day management headaches. So no more tenants, toilets, and trash, no more dealing with trying to get your tenants to pay rent. I know that with COVID-19 and the pandemic, when the CDC had the eviction moratorium, as well as a lot of state and local governments had eviction moratoriums, it was very, very difficult for a lot of clients that own multifamily properties and weren't able to collect rent, yet they still had to pay all their expenses, property taxes, mortgages, etc. And so, that chasing down the tenants, that's now done by the sponsors. So no more tenants, toilets, and trash. You don't have to do the daily upkeep of the property, coordinating with the landscaper or with the roofing, with the roofer or the contractor or whatever you're doing at your properties now as you manage them. The bookkeeping, the accounting, etc. That's all done for you by the asset manager, which is the Delaware Statutory Trust sponsor company. So number two, they have professional asset and property management in place, again, by a professional real estate owner and operator that has a staff typically of full-time property managers, asset managers, acquisitions and disposition team members, accounting staff, a CFO, in-house counsel. You've got a full integrated real estate team that is dealing with the day-to-day of the asset and property management. So a lot of investors like this because it allows you to concentrate further on what really matters to you in this time of life. Whether that be your kids, your grandkids, travel, could be other businesses. We have more and more clients that are younger. They're not, at that retirement age or right before retirement. They're younger. They just don't want to have to deal with, owning and operating the real estate anymore. They'd much rather, focus on other areas of life. So again, you're free to enjoy life without the burden of actively managing your apartment and commercial properties. Quick question here is, do I receive a K-1 at the end of the year for tax purposes? A lot of people are thinking of partnerships or real estate funds where they're issuing K-1s, and the answer is no. with a Delaware Statutory Trust at the end of the year, you're going to receive an operating statement for the DST that will show your portion of rental income and expenses at the property. So this is sometimes referred to as a substitute 1099. And essentially, the property has, X amount of gross revenue, X amount of expenses, and then the net operating income is, X as well. And then it'll show, oh, you owned 2.75% of the property. So it's 2.75% of each one of those items, revenue, expenses, net operating income. And then that's what you're going to take to your CPA, and he or she will input it on the Schedule E on your tax return, which is the same as all of your other commercial and rental properties. So for your CPA and tax preparer, it's going to be the exact same way that you're reporting your rental properties and investment properties on your tax return through Schedule E. So no K1 with a Delaware Statutory Trust. So what's the closing process for a Delaware Statutory Trust? So a lot of times investors want to know, how quickly can I close on one of these things if I'm coming up on my 45 days or wanting to plan ahead and just get ahead of the whole 1031 and not have the risk of a potential failed exchange, and they want to close on the investment quickly. So the typical DST property can be closed on within 3 to 5 business days after submitting, correctly executed subscription documents. Okay, 3 to 5 business days. So it's a very quick process. We've had clients close in as little as 24 hours before on DSTs. So, and the reason why these properties, these Delaware Statutory Trusts, can be closed on this quickly is that typically all the appraisals, environmental reports, property condition reports, financing, if the deal has financing, a lot of the properties that we work with, the K properties, have financing. A lot of the properties that we work as well don't have any financing, so there's no debt on the properties, they're debt free. Or the SNDAs, the estoppels from the tenants, all of that has already been completed. As these DST investments, they're pre-packaged for 1031 exchange investors. So the real estate sponsor company or the DST sponsor already went through the entire process on the actual asset, the real estate, whether it's a 300 unit apartment building or a 200,000 square foot industrial distribution warehouse facility. The property's been purchased, all the due diligence has been done by the sponsor, getting that appraisal, the property condition report, the environmental report, digging through the lease, all that stuff is already done, and then it's pre-packaged in the DST. As an investor, you get the full private placement memorandum. It goes into the business plan of the asset. It goes into the risk factors that you should be aware of with real estate. You've got access to all this due diligence material, same as if you were to go buy a 300 unit apartment building, you would order an appraisal, you would get a property condition report, you'd want an environmental report, et cetera. All that information is prepackaged there for investors to digest. And so that's why it's able to happen so quickly. So 3 to 5 business days. If you were to go out and decide to close on your own asset, whether you wanted to buy, another 25 unit apartment building or, a self-storage facility or whatever it was, from getting your offer accepted to, closing on that asset, it's going to be at least 30 days, more likely 60 or 90 days before you're able to close on that asset, where with the DST, it's a much quicker process. So here's some of the examples, the types of Delaware Statutory Trust investments that are available through K Properties and Investments on the KPI1031.com platform. First and foremost, multifamily apartments. We've worked with a lot of sponsors over the years doing multifamily apartment DSTs. Number 2, long-term net lease properties, or AKA triple net properties, whether the tenant might be, Walgreens, FedEx, CVS, Amazon, oftentimes large Fortune 500 companies where they've signed a 10, 15, or 20-year lease, and instead of you buying that, $15 million FedEx distribution facility with that 10-year lease and having all that exposure to one asset, that FedEx distribution facility is in a DST. And so typically the minimums are $100,000. And so you can allocate a portion of your 1031 exchange to that long-term net lease FedEx and a portion to a 300 unit apartment building and build a diversified portfolio. Diversification does not guarantee that an investor won't sustain losses, and it doesn't guarantee appreciation. But we still believe that Diversification is a very prudent thing to do, especially in today's day and age and in today's economic environment. And so the DST really helps investors, whether they're smaller investors, which we work with a lot of investors that, have that $2 to $5 million net worth range, and their exchanges are anywhere from 300 grand to $1 million, or if you're a larger investor, where we've got clients that are worth 50, $100 million plus, and they're doing 50 and $100 million exchanges, where we're building a very large diversified portfolio of DST investments. They know they could go and buy, that $15 million or $20 million distribution facility or apartment building on their own, but they're looking for a passive investment where they don't have to manage it all. It's being done professionally by the Delaware Statutory Trust sponsor company. And then number two, to build a diversified portfolio. They don't want all that exposure to one property with one tenant, or in the case of net leases or commercial properties, as well as they don't want all that exposure to one apartment market or one self-storage market, because things can happen. Companies move into towns, they leave towns. There's lots of development in a town, and absorption slows down and rental rates soften. So you want to typically building that diversified portfolio is something that those that are considering Delaware Statutory Trust investments are keenly aware of and interested in. Number three, healthcare and medical related buildings. We've done a lot of work with tenants like DaVita Dialysis and Fresenius Dialysis and other medical related tenants. You've got, like I mentioned before, self-storage properties available. Number five, we also have what many say to be the largest amount of debt-free DST properties on the market available on our platform on KPI1031.com, our marketplace. And debt-free is something that we're really keenly focused on, and it's because a lot of our clients, they're looking to mitigate risk. Although leverage can be nice, you can enhance potential returns, have higher potential cash flow, higher potential appreciation. When things don't go well, when the economy does, have backfires, when there's job losses, when the economy slows down, leverage can be problematic. There's trillion, I can't remember the stat, but it's either $3 or $4 trillion of commercial real estate debt coming due by 2025. So here in America, so there's going to be a lot of leverage coming due, and people are concerned about that. Now, when you go into an all-cash debt-free DST, you don't have to worry about leverage because the property is owned free and clear, and there's never a risk of lender foreclosure. Okay, the tenant could move out, or the property value could go down, or cash flow could stop, but you could never be foreclosed on that asset. And that's the main thing, is having staying power and not losing a large portion of your 1031 exchange dollars. So we've got a number of debt-free properties. We've got leverage properties for those that want or need debt replacement for their 1031 exchange, typically 50 to 60% loan to value. And then we've also got zero coupon properties for those looking for the higher, highly leveraged properties. So, and on the KPI1031.com platform, we basically have typically 20 to 40 different offerings, DSTs, Delaware Statutory Trusts, 20 to 40 different specific DSTs for our investors to consider. And these come from around 25 different DST sponsor companies, so Delaware Statutory Trust sponsor companies. So these sponsor companies, again, are the asset managers that go out, they find the properties, they buy them, they package them as a DST, and then make them available for investors. And we will walk you through those offerings, the 20 to 40 different DST offerings, walk you through the potential pros and the potential cons of each one of them, help you understand why investors would consider one in their situation, why they might not want to consider another one in their situation. We'll walk you through the various ins and outs and intricacies of the Delaware Statutory Trust. Again, we've been doing this for a long time. Our team has participated in over $30 billion of DSTs from pretty much every major DST sponsor company since this industry started. We essentially, we've been the top provider of equity for many of these sponsor companies. So we've seen their past, and we've seen what they've done well and what they might not have done well. And we will share with you that that knowledge and insight. Personally, I think it's over 75 different Delaware Statutory Trust investments that I've made personally, through 1031 exchanges or direct cash investments with many different sponsor companies. Like I said, one of the DSTs that I was in went for 12 years, and we can walk you through, what these scenarios look like. And that's, something that a lot of our clients appreciate, because a lot, others that may have access to DSTs might be a financial planner that maybe has only done one or two of them over the years. And so having participated in over $30 billion of DSTs, we can give you insight. We'd love to share that insight with you. And if it makes sense to help you with your exchange, we'd love to help you. But if not, we'll let you know. And we'll walk you through the potential pros and cons there. So if you go to kpi1031.com, you're going to be able to log in, get free access to these offerings. Also, if you'd like a free copy of my book on Delaware Statutory Trust properties, which is said to be by many the first book ever published on Delaware Statutory Trust properties, specifically for DSTs, we'll send you a copy of that as well as a free subscription to the 1031 DST Digest magazine. So if you give us a call or visit our website, we will definitely get you access and free copies of these. And then lastly, like I said earlier, our team's here to help. We've done a lot of these DST transactions. We've helped thousands of investors nationwide complete 1031 exchanges into DSTs. We're here for you. Reach out to us at any time, and just really appreciate everybody taking the time to join us today. Thanks so much.